Hi everybody, it's Patricia from Atomic Monsters, and we got another review for you. I'm going to go through the GIJoe Rolling Thunder, which is one of the, I'd like to say, upper big GIJoe playsets, but they do have bigger ones when you start looking at the Defiant and the USS Flag. But this thing is definitely huge in terms of GIJoe playsets. For those who have been watching all of our videos, this is the same day that we did the snail cart with Strawberry Shortcake, so we still have ourselves some Captain Morgan and Arizona green tea. So if I sound a little tipsy, that's why. I'm only showing you her turtle cup with Captain Morgan and Arizona. So if anybody's gone out since the last video and has bought any Arizona and Captain Morgan and tried it out, let us know how it turned out. I'd definitely like to know. This is not in my personal collection. It's actually an item in the store, which is kind of an interesting distinction, because technically anything in my store is still kind of in the personal collection, but it means it's an item that I'm not choosing to keep at any length or period of time and is available for others to purchase. And I have here is a complete Rolling Thunder from the original vintage Real American Hero line. There is a few small pieces of damage to this vehicle. Zoom in right here. I'll point out the most immediate one right here. There's a bit of what I like to call plastic melt. There's certain pieces of plastic and or rubber that when they come in contact with each other over time will cause the other to melt, and that has caused this. There's another place on this Rolling Thunder where this has happened as well. This one is complete. It comes with the pilot Armadillo, who in this case is in really good shape. I think he's one of the more generic G.I. Joe figures. But when you're buying a big vehicle like this, you're not buying it for the figure, you're buying it for the vehicle and the playset. So that's perfectly fine. You don't usually see Armadillo very much in any of the G.I. Joe cartoons or comics so much. It's usually all the other regular characters, and you only ever see him when this vehicle is brought out to play. This is actually a really cool vehicle. It's got a lot of articulation and a lot of weaponry on it. It's kind of ridiculous. It's in terms of my personal taste on a G.I. Joe vehicle that I'd like to collect and that I find iconic. It's not in my range of what I would like to have. For instance, this tiny His tank I have, I for myself, is a better G.I. Joe toy than this entire Rolling Thunder. But if I was a hardcore G.I. Joe collector, I would definitely want to buy this and then pose a whole bunch of G.I. Joe figures around it. So in that sense, I consider it like a really highly rated item. But for me personally, in terms of trying to fulfill my own collecting needs, I would not seek it out high myself, which is why it's not in my personal collection. I'd rather have a His tank myself, or a Conquest, or even a Cobra Stun would be better. The Cobra base, I'm completely too much rum. I'm forgetting the name of the Cobra base, the Terradome. I was getting it mixed up with the Ninja Turtle Technodrome for some reason. I'll put this back up here. But if you're somebody who is collecting, and G.I. Joe was one of your main collecting lines, this would definitely be a really good centerpiece, unless you had a Defiant or a USS Flag, for instance. This thing is really amazing. My only complaints with it is I wish it had more posts to stand figures on. As it is, it has two seats here for figures. And I'll remove Armadillo. It says 4 seats here on these turrets, which are strapped in. It's also missing the antenna / flag before anybody points that out. It has 2 seats here for driving it, as well as there's a seat here, if you look really carefully. And you could technically fit a few more figures in it. The whole thing opens up and the missiles fall off. This is definitely a vehicle that sticks missiles where they don't need to be. Like, why do you need one on this turret? That's just a weird place to stick a missile. But this whole thing moves. This section will move back like this. This section opens up. And this little ATV unit comes out, which is another place where you can put a vehicle if you want to make any sort of form of diorama, like a battle scene or something. You could definitely have this going up against any other Cobra unit of equal size, or a number of other smaller units. Like, you could have this fighting against a whole bunch of HISS tanks or similar. And you can put another unit there. Then this part opens up, and this missile turret removes, and you can set it up as a completely independent unit by itself. This section opens up here, and up comes this entire long-range missile unit, which fires cluster missiles. If you look at one of these, you see these missiles come off. And inside each of these missile units, which is really cool, is a whole bunch of cluster bombs. So this whole thing, if you were to like think of it as an actual weapon, would fire up into the air, drop a whole bunch of cluster bombs, and potentially be a warhead on its own, but it doesn't need to be. I think the entire point of it would be to drop these 6 cluster bombs onto an enemy stronghold from high in orbit. So it's literally a large all-terrain mobile base with the ability to make mobile high-altitude strikes against enemy bases. Put this back together. And there's 2 of these that come in this. This is definitely one of the most heavily armed G.I. Joe bases that has ever been put together. And it looks really cool. Even brand new, this piece kind of falls, so you may want to put a piece in here to hold it up. Otherwise it just falls over. If I had any complaint about this piece, it would be that. I don't have all of the gun turrets pushed all the way into their posts, so they are a little loose. They are a little bit out of the box in that respect. If you look carefully, they have not been pushed all the way in, and that's simply because, 1, that's the way I got it, and 2, I like to leave things for customers to make choices. If this was my own, I'd push it together so that they snapped better into place. But in terms of a buyer who would want one of these for their own collection, I'd like to leave them the option, if they wanted to customize one of these, to put something else in that place. And by pushing these in, it actually makes it a lot more difficult for them to customize. So I have left each of these loose. As you see, this piece comes out really easy, where there's a little post on there that would snap completely into place. And if anybody was to want to remove these for their own means to replace them with something else, then they might break, because this is a more rigid plastic, and not all plastic ages well. So when I find a piece, unless I'm keeping it for myself, stuff like this I tend to leave unfinished on purpose. We'll put it back together. Actually, we'll display it one more time fully open so people can get a good look at it. I would rate this piece an 8 out of 10. And the drawbacks I would give it would be the following. One, the driver is more generic than a lot of the other G.I. Joe drivers. There's some more really distinct and cool looking drivers. This guy, if you didn't tell me it was Armadillo, I might mistake him for Grunt. Some version of Grunt, for instance. Two, I would put more posts on the edges. I feel like here and here, there should be like 3 posts for standing figures on each of these. 3, as cool as it is has to have this vehicle, it's weird that it's there. It doesn't make sense. Like if you needed to emergency raise this for battle reasons to fire these, there's an ATV in the way. In terms of storage, is just kind of odd. And you got this weird missile here, which is strange. And it doesn't even fit properly right. Like if you look at the back fin on it, kind of forces it to sit kind of forward on an angle. If you look really closely, like when I push it all the way down, it's kind of pointing forward. So you can't even, like, it has to sit somewhat loose. So I give this an 8 out of 10. It's cool. And if you want a big piece in your G.I. Joe collection to really showcase off a battle scene, this looks amazing. But from play value, there's just a few things that kind of like don't resonate with me very well. Again, like for my own needs, even this tiny Cobra his tank makes me a lot happier. For those wondering, this actually makes sound. I can't remember where I got this. There's a battery compartment in it. Can't remember how to activate it, but it does make sound. I'd rather have a his tank than this in my own collection. But if you look at my collection as a whole, I don't collect just G.I. Joe. And if you were a heavy G.I. Joe collector, this would be definitely something that would be a really amazing centerpiece in your collection. I can imagine there's a lot of people out there who might, if they go back and look at their own history as a G.I. Joe collector, might prize this very highly. Either they had it and they loved it, or they saw it in a catalog and they really wanted it. And for them, this might be the pinnacle of their collection. But I think you'd be better suited off with a Defiant or a USS Flag. This would serve as a good counterpoint to the Cobra Dome, which I'm again rum-braining over. Rum. Let's put it back together and close it up. It looks cool. Great piece. And that's it. And I'm Patricia from Atomic Monsters. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. There's a link to my toy group on Facebook. provided below. It looks like I'm going to be putting up reviews every Friday if you want to check out to see what I'm talking about. This is my most hated piece in the entire set. Honestly, is this missile base that really, it makes no sense. If you were trying to set this thing up in a hurry, say you were a member of G.I. Joe and you wanted to set this thing up in a hurry, how are you setting this up? It's not mobile in any way, shape, or form, so somebody would have to pick this up. And from a toy perspective, it's the piece that clips these two together. It just makes no sense. And ultimately what it's supposed to do is just sit there. Put this piece back in. That and the ATV. The ATV makes sense from like a play feature perspective. This doesn't make sense. And I definitely don't recommend playing with this thing when you've had a few rums and Arizona iced tea mixed together, or any other drinks, because sometimes it can get confusing. But anyways, you guys stay geeky. I love you all. Talk to you later.